Welcome to the Show. We are two geeks who talk about everything. My name is Aaron, and I am joined, as always, by my cousin Landon.
Good day. Welcome to another session of our Show podcast. We're pretty excited to talk to you about a classic series this week.
Yes, it is a classic in every sense of the word. And we're kind of preparing for what's coming. So you may or may not know Creed 3 is headed to theaters on March 3rd. And so we're going to be taking a look at those movies that kind of act as the sequel series to the Rocky franchise. But that's next week. That's the future. Let's focus on the present and the past. See what you did there. So we can't talk about Creed until we've seen the thing that came before it, and that is Rocky. So we're kind of getting a history of boxing with Sylvester Stallone and Rocky Balboa. So that's going to be 6 movies. It's a lot of ground to cover. So let's get to it.
Shall we?
Overall, what thoughts do you have? This is like I said, 6 movies. That's the Star Wars saga before the sequels all came out.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think when we were growing up, so it preceded us, the original one. And so, just Rocky being on the shelf at home, being a VHS that people knew about well, by the time that we get to an age, I mean, obviously over a decade later, before we would have probably seen it and understood it or anything like that. But our age was the Rocky 4, period. That was the one, right? And you could have walked into that movie and never have seen the other ones as a kid, and just been all about it just because of how great the movie was. But then going back and watching them and going through all 4 of them was just kind of like every once in a while you just got to do that. So, I loved those, and we'll talk more about the individual ones, but growing up when Rocky 5 came out, it was a bit of a disappointment. And after 4, and what of course it would have been, to a kid.
Right.
And then later as an adult for Rocky Balboa to come out, it felt like another one of those movies where an older actor tries to get one more in, what I mean, for the series. And so me watching all 6 of them yesterday, from when I got up to the evening, was so helpful for me because it actually made me love the series and the franchise more than I ever have in my life.
Yeah, it puts a lot into context when you watch them all back to back to back to back to back.
Yeah.
So I'm right there with you with I get it's a generation thing. Like part 4 was like the one.
Right.
Now I do remember having some foreknowledge of Rocky. I'm pretty sure I saw 3 at a young age because I remember I knew that he fought Mr. T.
Right.
But I had no real conception of what Rocky 3 was about. But I do know that my dad took me to see Rocky 4 in the theater, and it was so exciting because I mean, here it is. This is Rocky fighting against communism. I mean, he's going to single-handedly end the Cold War, right?
And he does. I mean, pretty much.
But here's the thing: like, I think as a 5-year-old going into that movie, I really had no concept of what a sequel was, and I specifically remember sitting down in the theater before the lights went out, asking my dad, are they going to show the first 3 and that's what Rocky 4 is? I mean, seriously, dude, that's so stupid. I mean, think, child, think. So, but I do remember like that being like such a big deal, seeing Rocky 4 in the theater, and then eventually Rocky 5 came out. Had a bigger gap between it than the rest of them did.
Right.
Because it was like 3 years between each one.
And this one was 5 years, wasn't it?
Yeah, this one 5 years later.
Oh.
But was supposed to take place like the next day.
Yeah.
And seeing Rocky 5 in the theater after seeing the awesomeness that was Rocky 4, it's like, they should have ended it with 4.
Yeah. No, I mean, I remember as a kid hearing Rocky 1 is the most amazing movie. And as a kid at that time, it was like, I find it to be the most boring
It's
movie.
boring. Right.
Now,
Yeah.
as an adult, right? As an adult, it's way different now. I
Yeah.
really like the movie a lot now.
Like I remember, so after seeing 4 in the theater, Dad, I'm certain it was my dad who felt it important to reintroduce me to those earlier movies so that I had more context as, who is Rocky? Because he was telling me, you don't remember this, but Rocky was kind of a bad guy in the first one.
Right.
And I was like,
Right.
really? And so
Right.
so I remember, like, I don't know if it was because it came on TBS, like there was a marathon or something, and we sat down and we watched the first 3 together. And I was like, I don't want to watch this. This is boring. Because Rocky 4 is all montages and
Yeah.
hardcore like 80s music, and
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's all action. It's nothing but action.
Yeah.
And Rocky is this very deep drama about this guy who, is an underdog. And as an adult, it's an amazing movie. And I
Yeah.
love it. I love
Yeah.
every bit of it. Rocky 2, almost as much as the first one, maybe more in some cases. But gosh, it's
I
just
like Rocky 2, and as a kid, I liked Rocky 2 and Rocky 4. I guess because the Rocky 2 aspect was like, all right, somebody's got to win this one. This is somebody's going to win this one.
yeah.
This isn't
There
the
can't be
tie.
a question.
It wasn't a tie in the first one, but at the same time, it really was kind of a tie in the first one. But it's
It
just
was
like,
almost a tie in the second one.
yeah, the third though was always just a joke to me. I mean, seeing Mr. T there, and I like the A Team. That was a show that I watched, and so Mr. T was like, oh, people, you know. But and then also having Hulk Hogan. At that time, I was a big Hulk Hogan fan, as a kid. That was our era, and so
Thunder
um,
Lips, baby.
yeah, Thunder Lips, So the two of them being in it was like cool, and then you see the movie, and you're just like, yeah. And then Mickey dies. You're just like, gosh, this
Spoiler
movie
alert.
sucks. God.
All right, well, let's dive into these movies individually, and of course, start at the beginning. So the one that started it all, starring Sylvester Stallone, Talia Shire, Carl Weathers, and Burgess Meredith as Mighty Mick. Rocky was written by Stallone, directed by John G. Avildsen. It was released on December 3rd, 1976, and brought in $225 million at the box office. It's a classic that was nominated for 10 Academy Awards, won 3 of them for Best Picture, Director, and Film Editing, and it currently sits at a 91% on Rotten Tomatoes. And for me, I gotta be honest, the first, I'll say really the first 2 Rocky movies are more about the relationship between Rocky and Adrian
Yeah.
than they are about boxing. Boxing is like an afterthought when
Right.
it comes to these 2. I mean, yes, it's important because that is who Rocky is. He is a fighter, and the whole premise of this movie is that you've got Apollo Creed, the world heavyweight champion of the world. He is like, I don't know why I said world twice. But he's looking for the next gimmick, right? He's looking
Right.
for some reason to get a big payout for what's going to be the next spectacle. And so
Right.
he decides, hey, let's fight a nobody.
Right.
Just get some
Well, and they
boxer.
weren't they in a spot too, because he was going to fight somebody, and then it
Yeah,
fell through,
yeah, it was
and so they needed to do something.
yeah. So they had the date, the venue all set
Right.
up, and
Right.
it was somebody who just it wasn't going to work out for the fight to happen,
Right.
and so they had to replace him, and they find this guy, and he only picks him because his nickname is the Italian Stallion,
Yeah.
and it rolls off the tongue, and it
Yeah.
sells well.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's incredible. So you got this guy on the street. No one knows if this guy can actually fight,
Right.
but you bring him in, and it's like, this is the opportunity of a lifetime. You need to do this.
Well, and it's interesting to see too, Rocky's relationship with Mick, because just he tells him, as he loses his locker, he's not going to be able to fight, or to be able to have a residency there in training. And it's
Right.
because, pretty much, man, you got what it takes, but you're not willing to go and do and go the distance.
He's a bum.
He's a bum.
He
He doesn't have a drive or a reason why, if you will. And him getting plucked and put into this position kind of makes him kind of have to do it. He's like, oh, okay, I guess I gotta go and do this. And so now and then it's funny because then Mick comes back to him and he's like, well, I'd like to train you, and of course Burgess Meredith is completely perfect. He's such
he's so
no
great
one could
in
have
this
done
role.
that. But he comes into it, just that scene in Rocky's apartment is so perfect. It's a great scene.
Yeah, and I'm totally on board with Rocky, like, because he basically kicks Mickey out, and is like, why would I come to you as a manager? You kicked me out of your gym. All right, you said I was no good. You called me a bum, and he was right to. Mickey was 100% correct. Rocky had all the potential in the world, but he wasted it. He was a leg breaker for a loan shark.
Yeah.
And that's, so Mickey's right. He's not worth the time and the effort it takes to train somebody to be a good fighter.
Right.
And then suddenly this opportunity comes along, and Mickey's not seeing dollar signs. He's not seeing, what a lot of other opportunistic people would see. He's finally seeing that Rocky has an opportunity to embrace the potential he has.
Yeah.
And Mickey wants to be a part of that.
And Mickey also felt like he never had that chance or opportunity himself.
Right.
And so he's kind of wanting to do this, because if you're going to do it, you need to do it right.
Yeah.
But there were some other elements. You talk about Adrian and their relationship, as well as, her brother.
Paulie.
Yeah, Paulie. I always thought it was interesting, their relationship, because Rocky, remember when they go on their date and Paulie kind of forces her out.
Yeah.
That whole scene and the turkey and like trashing the whole thing. He is so awful.
Yeah.
At the same time, he really, in an abusive way, gets her to go out and gets out. And then Rocky goes and takes her back to his place, and she's like, I'm uncomfortable, I want to go home. And he's just like, yeah, I'm uncomfortable too. Let's stay. I'm just like, that wouldn't fly today. Nope.
No. But it's like, ultimately I love their relationship. And just the the honest, like, almost innocent kind of love that he has for her.
Right.
Like, it's a very childlike romance, is the only thing I can.
He doesn't play the game on the entire series. If there's one thing that I loved about his character, it's he doesn't play. It's not even that he could try to play the game. He doesn't know how. It is completely absent from him, and it does seem somewhat childlike. But I guess what we're really searching for is there's this innocence that can't be corrupted, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
You see that corruption everywhere, though, because it's riddled throughout the series. It's riddled throughout the series about a person who has an opportunity, who becomes, and not always corrupted per se, but gets distracted by the limelight. And Apollo Creed is no shortage in that for him, because we see it both in the first one, we see it in the second one, we see it, in the fourth one. And then we see that same lure to Tommy gun in the fifth one. And Rocky gets a little bit, tempted into all that in the third one, right? Because it's not the same, in my opinion.
It's I would argue that it kind of is, like, because once you reach Rocky 3, at this point Rocky's the champion. He's won the belt away from Apollo. And so, now he's on top of everything, and he is where Apollo was.
Right.
And so when it comes to the real fight that's coming against Clubber Lang, Mr. T, where this is a serious fight. This is somebody who's hungry for the title, and Mickey is, he's against fighting Clubber because he says you haven't been hungry like that since you fought Creed, and
Right.
it's true. And he's nailing it, and that's the same way that Apollo was, and I think Apollo tries to kind of spell that out for him when he comes alongside Rocky, halfway through Rocky 3, and is saying you had the eye of the tiger, man.
Yeah.
And that was
That
something that
sounds
he
like a
lost a long
song.
time ago. It's a great song. Unfortunately, it lost best song in the Oscars to Up Where We Belong from An Officer and a Gentleman. Got
Which, I mean, well, hey, real quick though, let me just say I do think there is a difference between how Rocky encounters the wealth and fame and his position versus the rest. And the reason I do think it's different is because with Apollo, there was a lot of ego, involved in it. And I've always seen Rocky as being, even when he had the wealth, it's that he didn't take it seriously enough. In fact, like it goes back to his in each of these situations when Rocky devolves or goes into a bad place, it's always because he doesn't have his priorities right. It's not because he's after money or
right.
after fame. And I find that both in Apollo's and in Tommy Gun, they're after fame. They're after know me, know who I am. And
Yeah,
Rocky's never been that, you
yeah.
know.
He's
Still
not
a
he
problem, but
Yeah,
just different.
when Rocky finds himself losing, it's more about his heart than it is about his ego.
Right. Right.
And we see that. So let's move into Rocky 2. um so it's important to remember that the end of Rocky 1, uh the first film, it's not about Rocky winning the fight, right? He doesn't win. His goal isn't even to win. He just wants to stand toe to toe with the champ and go the distance. He wants to go the full 15 rounds without being knocked out.
And not throw the fight or not do anything, to
Right.
really be genuinely fighting.
Right. And he accomplishes that. He accomplishes his goal. That's all he wanted. And at the end of it, it's not even about like him. He doesn't care what the decision is.
Right.
He's not waiting around to see that. He just goes and find Adrian in
Yeah.
the audience, because
Yeah.
that's where the heart of the movie is him and Adrian falling in love and their relationship being built. And then you come to Rocky 2,
You got to get through
and
the first 15 minutes of watching the end of Rocky 1.
well, yeah, of course, every Rocky movie gives you the last 10 to 15 minutes of the previous one.
In case you missed it.
So okay, so Rocky 2 was 1979. But this time Sylvester Stallone is writing and directing.
Yeah.
Yeah, the same main cast returning, play the same roles they did before. So the rematch took in $200.1 million, and it's got 72% on Rotten Tomatoes. And again, I think it's more about the relationship than it is the actual boxing, and you see that when so obviously the story is that Apollo decides he wants a rematch because he didn't feel like the judgment, the decision at the end of the first match was good enough. That doesn't
Right.
count as a win in his book. I mean,
Right.
yes, he won, but he's like, it's a technicality. And there are people like the court of public opinion are out there, like screaming that Rocky should have been the one to win.
Right.
And that's not good enough for Apollo. So he wants a rematch. He's chomping at the bit for a rematch. Rocky's done. He doesn't want anything to do with it. He's ready to settle down with Adrian. He asks her to marry him. They get married. She gets pregnant. They're having a happy life together.
Right.
But at the same time, Rocky's pride is starting to get a little bruised because he doesn't have a way to support his family.
Right.
He can't get a good job that he can hold on to that allows him to be the husband and father to be that he feels like he should be, that
Right.
that typical family man that he would have grown up knowing in the 40s and 50s, that now he's becoming in the 70s and 80s. And so because of that, he decides, I have to go back to fighting.
Right.
Adrian's not down with that.
Nope.
And it leads to, well, it leads to Paulie being a jerk to her for not backing Rocky up.
Right.
But then as they fight and she gets upset, she goes into premature labor and goes into a coma. So
Right.
here's Rocky's heart just broken. And so at this point, he's not training, he's not gonna fight. It's over. Again, he's done with fighting because if Adrian's not gonna be there for him, then there's no point.
There's no point. Right. And then ultimately she does wake up from that coma, and she gives him the go ahead.
Yeah.
Win.
She says
Right.
win. Like
Win.
And I'm in tears. I'm in tears when she says this. And then you got Mickey in the background. What are we waiting for?
And then they go and train, and the movie is pretty, I mean, it's not very deep, but it does touch on something that I found myself attaching to this round more than I ever have, because where I am at in life, and it was about the family aspect.
Mhm.
And having the Paulie in the background, not that I have a Paulie in my life, thank heavens, but having, I mean, other than you, of course, I mean, but like just the idea of being in that spot and trying to support your family, and going through that. But the movie is pretty straightforward. I do think that we come to the end of the second one, and I think that Apollo looks at Rocky and sees beyond his pride and ego, and sees that this is he almost passes the test, if you will. This is a qualified individual, who I am fighting with. He really is that good, and we really are toe to toe. And so that's something that we get in multiple movies, being underestimated, being the underdog, and then proving even to the entire, entirety of Russia, by the fourth one, winning over the hearts of the entire stadium. But I think that's enough for two. I mean, I don't know that there's much else to talk on about two that I can think of.
No. They go the distance again. I guess it's only dramatic if they go the full 15 rounds. But at the end, it's almost like you see this. It's not even a grudging respect. Like Apollo truly respects Rocky,
right?
In the end, and they have this respect for each other as opponents,
right?
And Rocky from the first one understands that Apollo Creed is the best of the best.
Right.
And so again, that is why, his only goal was to stand toe to toe with him. It wasn't to win. It was just, I want to do this to prove to myself that I'm not a bum, that I can do this.
Right.
And in the second one, his goal is to win. He was like, all right, we've been here before. I know I can go toe to toe with him. This time I want to beat him.
And he does.
He does. It's in the last second, literally the last second, because that's
a great scene. I love really that scene when they're both climbing, and it's such slow motion. And even though I know how it's going to end because I've seen it so many times, I'm still going,
tense.
Oh, just don't fall, and then you see Apollo slump down in that corner, and you're like, so good. Yeah. 3, by this time, we're getting Sylvester Stallone is he also looks so different in 3. I think that's one of the things that I found most remarkable is the body change.
Because now he's an action star, and so he's cut.
Yeah, he's really cut. Of course, he's especially cut in 4, but even in 3, I mean, and they've got him ripped at the prime of his career, and he's thin. He's so thin in the face compared to the first one. And but he's going at this in the scene about him going up against Hulk Hogan, Thunderlips, was pretty much telling of what the story of the movie was going to be about. It's about, just going in there, taking it easy, underestimating it, and then totally getting, pounded down.
Yeah.
But that, Clubber wasn't necessarily a deep foe, it wasn't like a masterminded foe.
Oh no.
Just like you said, he was hungry for it. and vicious even.
Yeah, this is where you see Rocky kind of resting on his laurels a little bit.
Yeah.
He's got this comfortable lifestyle now.
Soft.
And yeah, he softens up, even though he's more cut than ever.
Yeah.
I mean, he looks like carved steel,
Yeah.
but yeah, he's softened up a little bit, and he doesn't take it seriously. He doesn't take it seriously when Mr. T comes up with a challenge.
Right.
And I mean, and he did it the right way too, because Mickey knew about this guy the whole time. Like, he knew that this fighter was an up and coming guy who is undefeated, and he's hungry for the title. But Mickey's not bringing him to Rocky because he knows Rocky cannot beat this kid.
Right.
And so Clubber Lang shows up in public and calls Rocky out, and is like, it's just the perfect way to get under Rocky's skin, to make sure, all right, I'm gonna fight this guy. I can take him because he pissed me off.
Yeah.
And so
he's even like talking to Adrian. He's like, happy to help, happy to be the man you need.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
He's like, ooh,
yeah. No, that is not the nerve you want to strike. But I mean, it worked. And again, because Rocky is so he's been handed these fights for that we get in the montage at the beginning of the movie, that he's just easily knocking people down left and right, and maintaining his title. And it's because these fighters have been handpicked because they're has-beens.
Which is interesting. I know we're not talking about Creed right now, but that is an interesting place that happens with these fighters. At the top here, it's pretty much a theme throughout the movie, is that you're getting these hand-fed and picked people, that you're at the top, and it makes you soft. There is it is pretty cool how Apollo helps train him and gets back to his roots and takes him back to where Apollo's roots were, and training and learning that way.
Right.
And I really liked how that kind of helped to get him humble. And in a way, it was good for both of them, and in that mentality too. So,
but even in that training, though, remember, like, it was Adrian who has to wake Rocky up and get him to see that this is a fight he can win, that this is something that he needs to do for himself, to because he lost, and then Mickey dies, and he's in this horrible state of depression. And even with Apollo coming alongside of him, being like, hey, we need to get you back to the hungry fighter you used to be, bring back the eye of the tiger.
Right. That doesn't do it until Adrian.
That song. Yeah. None of that works. He's like, what's the matter with you? Like, he's not opening up. He's not doing what needs to be done. And Adrian finally gets him to admit he's afraid. He's afraid of this guy. And he doesn't understand. He doesn't know how to find the whatever this courage that came from inside of him without Mickey there in his corner.
Right.
And Adrian finally wakes him up and says, this is not about that. You can do this. You just have to believe in yourself.
Right. Yeah. And it of course he wins out and overcomes. But so many things in this series is about these phases of life that you're in. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be that you're like a person who, as an adult, I'm talking from not a kid looking at this, when I was a kid, but these phases of life where you don't have to be like the heavyweight champion of the world to know what it's like to have some ups and downs in your life, or to lose people, or to be in a spot in your career where you were at a place and then you're at a different place. And how do you, regain your self-respect? There's a lot of themes in this that just talk about different phases, of your life, and especially how someone close to you can help kind of bring you out of the rut. Love that about it. Let's talk about our favorite one.
Well, let me give you those stats on 3 real quick.
Oh yeah.
Just so we got those covered. Came out in 1982. Stallone was again the writer and director. Mr. T was the only big, cast member to be added. This one did better at the box office. Well, I mean, it's really just a cameo, glorified cameo. He's just Thunderlips, baby. Brother. So this one actually did better at the box office than the first two, bringing in $270 million. And like we said, the only Academy Award this one was nominated for was for Eye of the Tiger as Best Original Song, and it did not win. 67% on Rotten Tomatoes. Moving into 4, this is another one where Stallone is playing double duty, writer and director. We don't have Burgess Meredith, but we do pick up Dolph Lundgren as Ivan Drago and Bridget Nielsen as Mrs. Drago. And that's only because she was in a relationship with Stallone at the time this movie was being made.
Oh, she was?
Oh, yeah. So this 4th installment brought in $300.4 million, which is the largest box office for the franchise thus far. Yet it sits at a 37% on Rotten Tomatoes.
What?
Rocky IV was not nominated for any Academy Awards, but did fairly well with several Golden Raspberries.
What?
See, that's the thing. We look back on this movie with such fond nostalgia, and so many people our age will say, oh, it's the best one. It is absolutely the best one because Rocky single-handedly ended the Cold War. But here's the thing. This is the shortest Rocky movie, coming in at 91 minutes long. And approximately 87 minutes of that is montage. Seriously. Like, I'm kidding. It's not really, like, that's 87 minutes. Obviously, that's an exaggeration. But seriously, there's the Rocky 3 recap at the beginning. That's a montage.
Yeah.
You get Living in America, James Brown, which is basically a music video. You get, so after Apollo is killed by Drago, you get Rocky's angry, grief-fueled drive filled with memories of Apollo.
Right.
Then you get 2 separate training montages in Russia that are only separated by Adrian showing up and giving Rocky her blessing.
Shut your face hole. Stop it. You're speaking against
it's all montages. It's all, see, and I think that's why we love it so much. It's because it's like, oh, montages make us all feel good.
You know, I think it's funny though, because like when I look at Dolph Lundgren, see, I have double feelings here because of He-Man, Masters of the Universe, where he played He-Man, which, I guess for some would be a cult classic because it's not necessarily lauded to be an amazing movie for anybody, but for me in my childhood, it was so awesome to see live action He-Man. So, when I look back on that, I'm like, oh, that's He-Man, and it's just, they're so strong. He's so formidable. I mean, the fact that you got 3 movies with Apollo, he kills Apollo, that just sets it up as being like the epic battle. The part about the Russia and him, ending communism and the theme of that, or, I don't, that doesn't mean anything to me. I mean, not that I don't care about that. It means something to me. And
what are you talking about? You pinko?
But in the movie, it's like that, the idea of him going to a foreign place to go bring down the guy who killed his friend, that's the thing that gets me, and him going and doing that. And then, of course, I think it's cheesy at the end how the crowd gets completely won over by him. I'm just like, yeah, that wouldn't happen.
That's not real life.
But
if I can change, if you can change, everybody can change.
Not the most epic speech either.
No, it's the Russian guy doing the translation that's epic.
Yeah, that was one. But the training aspect was pretty hardcore in Russia.
Gosh, yeah.
That was
I love
awesome.
the like. I mean, we're doing this grassroots training montage instead of, we're not in a gym, we're not lifting weights, we got a cargo net and rocks.
Yeah, and you're just out there.
We got an ox cart.
I think it was hilarious. I still openly laughed when Paulie was out in the snow and he fell over and he couldn't get up.
This is detrimental to my sinuses.
Oh man.
Yeah, that's
But
a great scene
I
when they get
still
there.
liked it. I watched it and I enjoyed every bit of that 90 minutes. I really
Oh
did.
yeah. There's I so before we signed on and started, the proper episode, I mentioned to you that rewatching these movies, there's not a single one of them that I didn't tear up in.
Mm.
And I mean, some of them, the first two, are obviously more dramatic than the rest. You get you it's almost like, all right, the first two are about the relationship between Rocky and Adrian, sure, but then the rest of them are just, it's about boxing. And but even so, it's like, Rocky 3, you have the loss of Mickey, and Stallone's, portrayal of Rocky just losing it in that locker room over Mickey's body. I mean, that had me in tears.
Yeah.
When he's got Apollo dies in the ring, that's got me going too. And
Him holding the towel
holding the towel,
and just and oh, that part right there. And then you have his trainer just like, throw the towel,
yeah.
you just
And every time I watch that, I know that Duke goes on to train Rocky in Russia, and even comes back for Rocky Balboa to help train him for that. I can't help but wonder deep inside, does he blame Rocky for Apollo's death? I mean, it's not Rocky's fault, but Rocky could have thrown the towel, even though Apollo said, "Don't."
I know.
Fight.
Well, and I think at the same time, no one would have known Apollo better than his trainer, and he probably could have understood what position he put him in. Going forward, and we'll talk about this with Creed, not so much with Creed's wife. I mean, she pretty much is. I mean, stayed away after that scene. After that, she never came back. But I think, if anything, although again, like I said, we can talk about Rocky 5 in just a second. But this was, if the series had ended there, it would have been just fine.
Yeah,
it would have been just fine. But you add on these extra ones, and I'm glad they did. I'm glad they did, because I felt like I got something out of it. I really, for the longest time, did not like 5 and did not like Rocky Balboa. And then watching them yesterday, I found a strong appreciation for both films.
yeah.
And I really do think they should be part of it. I don't think they're tack-ons like I used to.
So yeah, like that. I won't say I didn't like Rocky Balboa. So Rocky 5, I was always disappointed with.
Yeah.
And disappointed that was the end of the Rocky franchise. And then when they came back with Rocky Balboa, I was like, really? Why are we doing this? I mean, it's been 20 years. Stallone's old. There's no way. Let's not do this. And but and again, we'll get into this when we get into the individual movie itself, but it feels like that gave it a better send-off than Rocky 5 did. It's like let's look at, like, think about Indiana Jones. Last Crusade, they ride off into the sunset, literally riding off into the sunset. I mean, it is a perfect ending to a great trilogy. And then Crystal Skull comes along,
which is your favorite.
It's like, why? I mean, you had a perfect ending for this character, and now you come along and aliens.
All right, well, whatever. Steven Spielberg, he's got to have his aliens.
Interdimensional creatures. All right, so Rocky 5.
Yeah.
Came out November 16th, 1990. Again, written by Stallone, but this time we bring back the original Rocky director, John G. Avildsen. But even he could not save Rocky 5 from being the least grossing movie in the series, that brought in only $119.9 million globally. It also has the lowest score of the franchise on Rotten Tomatoes, coming in at a measly 31%. And I think it earned every bit of that.
I would be surprised if the spending budget had to have been less, because you didn't really have a whole lot, you know, you didn't really have a whole lot that you had to accomplish there, other than where did he have his fight?
In the middle of the street.
No, not the end where that Tommy Gunn had his fight. He had it in the city in Philly, right? And that was it. Like,
Yeah.
there weren't any locations.
No, there weren't any big locations. There weren't.
So that's what I was thinking. Like, they couldn't have spent a whole lot of money on this
No.
film. There wasn't any big names in it.
No. I mean, well, Stallone.
I mean, still, well, that was probably half the budget. So this movie, I think I liked it this time, as opposed to never liking it before, because seeing his relationship with his son, this movie is really all about his relationship with his son, and about being distracted from his son by Tommy. And if there's any movie where hubris and pride come into play with Rocky more than ever, it's this one. You know, where he is distracted, almost living through someone else.
Mm-hmm.
And you see it when even when he's parted ways and made amends with his son, he's watching that match with Tommy Gunn in the ring, that final match that he's at, and he's fighting that bag, and they're like looking at him like, okay, you know, because he's living through Tommy Gunn,
right?
And there's something telling about that, but his relationship with his son, and what his son goes through, and changing schools, and going and being in that situation, having to be trained up to be able to hold his own, all of that stuff meant a lot to me, since, you know, I've got kids and my son's 10, and, you know, just thinking about all that stuff, you know.
Yeah, it's I just lost my train of thought. I was gonna say something, I'm sure that was gonna be incredibly thoughtful, and
I would think so.
Yeah,
we're gonna put a pin on that.
I don't speak unless it's something that's gonna be incredibly thought-provoking or hilarious, one or the other.
Provoking doesn't always mean positive.
Provoking. Yeah, so yeah, I think that this is a movie that had a lot of potential. Let's put it that way. I think that there are ways that they could have done it a little bit, like just tweak the formula just a little bit.
Right.
And it could have been so much better. You know, I don't have any problem with returning Rocky to his roots.
Nor I.
Taking away the wealth and everything. I do feel like it was abrupt. And that there was you know, I don't know if there's a different way they could have done that wouldn't have felt so jarring.
Right.
Because it's like, all right, for the last 2 movies, they've been living in this mansion. They've got a freaking robot that serves Paulie. You know, where all of a sudden they got nothing. They haven't had no investments. They just lose everything.
Well,
the only reason they've got a place to live in Philly is because Paulie never gave up his house.
And Paulie gives this power of attorney, you know, or signs this power of attorney for it. And it's interesting that Paulie signs that. You know what I mean?
Why does Paulie have that much power?
Right. So there's aspects of that are just completely odd. But this stuff happens, right? I mean, I think about when I heard that Lady Gaga, I think she had amassed a great deal of wealth in her original, you know, successes. And then she had a manager who screwed her over, and then she worked her way back. So I think this kind of stuff happens, and maybe there's a familiarity that they assumed, you know, at that time, if there had been celebrities or, you know, personalities that it had happened to. But I felt it was abrupt as well.
I'm sure it's super easy for any celebrity who has, you know, accumulated millions of dollars through whatever means to suddenly lose it and to be irresponsible,
or to entrust themselves to someone who's going to take advantage of them because they're too busy working on their craft.
Right. And so for suddenly them to lose everything, and for them to claim that Rocky can't fight anymore because he's got brain damage and could die if he tried to fight again. Well, I mean, it's a big pill to swallow.
Yeah.
But
And they
again,
shove it down your throat.
they shove it right down your throat.
And if you were not comfortable with having enough shoved down your throat, then you get the promoter guy.
Oh
and
my gosh.
that
Only in America.
That guy was quite memorable.
Obviously a nod to Don King.
Yeah. Oh, totally a Don.
Just without the hair.
Yeah. But just like definitely like shoved in your face.
Yeah.
And I also thought that, just the change for Tommy Gunn was a bit abrupt too. I mean, there's just, it's like, how do you go from this situation to this situation? And let's put in about 4 things that'll do it, and then we'll get there. It's just like,
yeah.
And
I can't help but wonder too, like so you got that montage where Tommy's winning all of these fights over and over again while he's being managed by Rocky. And of course he's asking about the title, and he's undefeated. But is Rocky treating him the same way that Mickey treated Rocky at the beginning of Rocky 3? Like, is he picking these fights because he knows that this kid can beat this person, so let's fight this guy and let's fight this guy. Let's not go for the title yet, because there's
I don't know, because we see a little bit again later in Creed, not to jump in too far ahead, but we get Rocky's style, which is definitely to try to be like Mickey. But I don't know, Mickey's not one that whole part back before about him, picking people, for him to be able, that he could beat, was very un-Mickey-esque, for me. I didn't find that to be, I never understood that, very well, because Mickey's always been rather brash on the fact Rocky's getting soft. And it's not like, yeah, you've been soft and I've been thinking it for some time. The second he felt like Rocky was soft, he would have said something. That was his character.
Sure.
So that was a little off base. The Tommy Gunn aspect, I don't know. I think about that entire movie about Rocky trying to live through somebody else, and it not really being about investing and caring about him like he would ultimately with Adonis.
Yeah, that is definitely what it ultimately comes down to. He sacrifices his relationship with his son to live vicariously through Tommy the Machine Gunn, and it does not turn out well. And just the stupidest ending. I think. I mean, it's great. It's fantastic. You get a street fight between Rocky and Tommy.
No gloves.
But how stupid is Tommy to go and pick a fight with Rocky Balboa in his neighborhood
in Philly?
I mean,
this kid's from Oklahoma. Let me just say, but this is something that some hick would do. You know what I mean? I mean, this is just, this kid just.
Hey, I'm calling you out.
Yeah, I'm calling. Come on here. I got you. I'm the whole fight thing. I liked how the gloves were off, and it really wasn't a fight. It wasn't like a ring fight. It wasn't like there was no question from start to finish that Rocky was going to win that thing. As opposed to every single movie prior, which has always been I don't know. It's really tight. This one wasn't tight. He's facing, getting hit in the head by Drago enough that, a couple of good licks, he's reeling and nauseous. But was there a moment at which I thought he was going to lose that fight? No.
And he certainly didn't need to go 15 rounds with this chump.
No.
Yeah, Tommy's a bum. And I feel like that his actions there at the end of that probably would have gotten him stripped of his title.
Certainly.
Like right away.
Yeah, he's out for sure.
And I loved the moment where, like, because throughout the whole movie, you've got Don King over here being on, "You touch me, I'll sue you."
Touch me, I'll sue. Touch me, I'll
Come on,
sue.
punk. What are you gonna do? Touch me, I'll sue you. And then finally, Rocky just lays him out. He's like, "Sue me for what?"
what?
That was
so
great.
good.
He's already lost everything. What are you gonna sue him for?
Oh, so good.
Only in America.
That was probably the best part of the movie.
Probably, yeah.
Other than the themes. All right, so let's talk about Rocky Balboa finishing this off.
All right, so finally we come to a sequel that probably surprised a lot of people because it's something that probably none of us ever expected to see. Just when you thought that the dumpster fire that was Rocky 5 was the end of the Rocky franchise, here comes Rocky Balboa, the follow-up that shows up 16 years later. Sylvester Stallone, he's writing and directing again. This time bringing in Milo Ventimiglia as Robert, who you would know as Jack from This Is Us, or Jess from Gilmore Girls, right?
Okay, all right. Can we just do a Heroes reference? Because that's
that's right. He was in Heroes too, wasn't he?
He's in Heroes, yeah.
Man, that was a good show. The first season.
It was.
So this is Rocky's grown-up son. During the writing process, it was decided that Talia Shire's Adrian, sadly, would have died from cancer several years earlier. This was a decision that Stallone believed would give the film more of a dramatic punch, and I think he's right. Yeah. This final film in the series pulled in $155.9 million at the box office and sits at 77% on Rotten Tomatoes. What are your thoughts about Rocky Balboa?
Again, original thoughts were, when I first saw it, were that it was just a tack on, another, and we're going to do another Rambo, right? We're going to do a Crystal Skull, right? We're going to do it's just this time period of doing these movies, in 2000s. And so I walked into it very skeptical and didn't give it a chance like I did yesterday. Now watching it, I really liked it. I thought it, I love that he has a restaurant named Adrian's. I love that it deals with him accepting his age, and that this is, him coming back to fighting and choosing to fight is not because of, like we dealt with Tommy Gunn, where he was living vicariously through somebody. He wants to come back to fighting, and just do local. He's like, I like fighting, and I've gotten the bill of health. I'm in good shape. I just want to fight locally. That's what I want, Yeah. And I appreciated that there's nothing wrong with that. And then of course he gets, coerced, or not coerced, but these guys are just trying to use him to get in, and he goes to fight this thing. But I felt like he's very innocent, and his world was all about an acceptance of where he was. Mm-hmm. There was not a turmoil or conflict within him throughout this, except for maybe just trying to find his place with the people around him, and trying to help the girl that he knew from the very first movie, and her son, and then him trying to find a place. He's not done anything wrong with his son, and he has to have a come to Jesus moment with his son, which again is not Rocky doing something wrong. It's him giving some real life advice to his son at this young age that he's in. And so there was just so many great elements to it. So, and I mean, I have to say, loved it way more than I did at the first time. What about you?
So obviously, we've said 4 is my favorite of the series, so this isn't my favorite movie, but I think it's fantastic. And unlike you, I thought it was great the first time I saw it too. I thought it was a really much more appropriate send off for the character. Again, this is years before we knew that a Creed movie was coming. We didn't know that the story was going to continue through Adonis Creed. But with this, that scene you're talking about, the come to Jesus moment that Rocky has with Robert, that kind of speech that he gives his son, it is gut-wrenching. It is powerful. And that might be my favorite scene of the entire franchise.
Yeah.
Not my favorite movie, but my favorite
My
scene.
favorite
And
scene. Yeah.
oh my gosh.
Well, everybody needs to hear it.
I'm
At some point in their life, every young person needs to hear that. And you either hear it through life teaching you that way, or God teaching you that way, or a well-meaning friend or spouse. But you got to learn. You got to hear that speech at some time to get over yourself.
Let me tell you something you already know. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. Now, if you know what you're worth, now go out and get what you're worth. But you gotta be willing to take the hits and not pointing fingers saying you ain't where you wanna be because of him or her or anybody. Cowards do that, and that ain't you. You're better than that.
such an amazing speech.
And it's true as a theme in all the movies too. And everything that we've watched from the beginning from him, it's all about him. He is hit. If you got to count for how many times he is hit in these movies compared to how much the other person gets hit, it's
he
crazy.
is a punching bag. That's how he wins these fights. He makes the other fighter tired from hitting him so much.
Which made it such a powerful scene and lesson in itself, because it wasn't just like, it's a good speech about telling your young kid to grow up and deal with life. I'm sorry that life is hard, but you've got to be able to push forward, and you can't just sulk about it. It's more than that. It's him saying, here's my life, and we've seen it in all these movies. Here's my life, and here's what I had to do to survive, and it's true. And we saw that played out. I would imagine one of the best aspects of this franchise and series is that Sylvester Stallone did write all of these, because that allowed for such themes to exist throughout, and you can tell from his standpoint that that's probably always been something for him. And then to be able to say that, in this regard, I'll bet was awesome for him, and therefore awesome for us.
Yeah. I feel like this one, it's almost like it takes us back to the beginning.
Yeah.
We really get a taste of what the original Rocky was like, because like you said, he's not trying to prove himself to anyone else. This is just something he wants to do. And it's like, it's not even, yes, in part, I think he wants to prove it to himself that he's still got something to offer as far as being a boxer and being a fighter is.
Yeah.
And so this opportunity comes along to again fight the heavyweight champion of the world, and it's all brought on by like a computer contest that said that Rocky in his prime would have easily beaten this new guy who is the current champion.
Right.
And and that's crazy. Like, I love thinking about stuff like that. Like, like in real life sports, like if you were to take Michael Jordan in his prime, like in the mid 90s versus LeBron James, who wins? Who wins in that one-on-one contest? Michael Jordan. I mean, obviously.
It is fun. It is fun to match it up, and think about that. One other thing that I wanted to say is that I loved how they didn't try to make a romance out of him helping the girl.
Oh yeah.
You get this place when they're in Vegas, at the end, you get this moment where she brings the picture of Adrian. So I thought I wanted to bring this because I thought you'd want to have her with you. And then she kisses him, just softly, and that's the end of it. And that was good, and that was fine to be done, and it wasn't like it could have been interpreted as a romantic kiss. It could have been interpreted as just a kindness. But either way, it was something that wasn't the point, and wasn't worth dwelling on, because everything in this movie didn't have to do with him taking care of her or being nice to her or helping her for any sort of romantic agenda.
No, he just did it because he is who he is.
He is.
He's
who
a
he
nice
is.
person who is always trying to look out for other people. And that is, I feel like, that's very likely something that he picked up from Adrian.
Yeah.
That is a personality trait that was not inborn in him when we first meet him in the first movie.
Right.
He's not about taking care of other people.
Right.
He's looking out for number one.
Right.
And
And
yes,
not like in an arrogant way.
No,
just say,
no.
hey, I got to take care of myself. I'll take care of my dog. He could be walking by somebody, and they could be in the gutter in the first movie, and he'd be like,
yeah,
sorry.
but he has this, and
But she does infuse that in him.
As hard as it was for me to watch this the first time, knowing that Adrian wasn't there, it's like I'm glad to know that they made a conscious decision about this, and it's like I said, I believe that they made the right decision by eliminating her from the
Right.
story, because her absence is so palpable.
It is. Yeah. And you're dealing with, the whole thing that's great about him coming back to boxing, by the coming to that resolve is he is kind of ending his grieving. He's been in grief for some time. And, Paulie says, I can't do this anymore, to him. And he's just, you see him in these habits and consistently reliving and all that. And it's unhealthy at that point where he's at, and he needs to not move on in a way that reduces his memory, but be able to live his life.
Well, it's heartbreaking for both of them, really. I mean, I get why Paulie's saying he can't do this anymore, because all of his memories are bad.
How he treated
because of who he was.
Right.
And for Rocky, all of his memories are wonderful, again, because of who he was with her.
Right.
And so Paulie saying what he did, he's absolutely right. Rocky needs to stop looking back and start moving forward.
Right.
Which again plays into the speech that he gives his son a little bit later. You got to keep moving on, keep moving forward. Doesn't matter.
Right.
All of this stuff that's happened in the past that's knocked you down, you got to get back up.
Yeah.
And that's part, I feel like he's giving that speech to himself too, because this whole time he's still, like, years after Adrian's passed on, he is still grieving her loss.
Yeah.
And it's time to move on. It's time to move forward. And oh my gosh.
Yeah. And you have a life that you can live, and you see him in that moment. He starts to, it was good that he found the girl, and her son. It was good for him to connect and be able to have that interaction, and that all of that stuff where there were opportunities for him to be able to, all right, let's talk about how I move forward now.
Yeah.
And he gets to do that. And this movie was really, I know you had said before that, the first ones were about Adrian and the other ones are about boxing. But this one felt more like the first two, that really it wasn't about boxing.
Right.
You know what I mean? This movie had so little to do with boxing, and in the end, of course, he fights in this big fight and he goes toe to toe, and the guy's like, "You crazy old man." He said, "You'll get there."
Yeah.
That's all fun stuff. But this movie was definitely an excellent send-off for the character that we would never see again. Oh wait.
Just when you think it's the last time. We will be talking about the Creed trilogy next week. As we mentioned before, Creed 3 comes out on Friday, March 3rd. So we'll be hitting that up in the theater before we record our next episode of the podcast. And we will be talking about all three of the Creed movies. I gotta tell you, this new one looks amazing. And again, we get Jonathan Majors in another big movie. Like, and he's the antagonist. It's like
he's still Kang. I don't know if you know this. There's a tie-in here.
This is okay.
This is just another variant.
That makes sense. This is a variant of Kang.
I wanted to let you know that if you're wondering.
I'm so glad you did, because I wasn't sure.
Just
Do
look
you
out
think there's
for it.
going to be a post-credit scene where he faces Spider-Man?
Of course.
Of course.
Of
But
course.
twist, it's Miles Morales.
There you go. And Michael B. Jordan will be playing Miles Morales, as
He
well.
can't. He was already Killmonger. He can't.
Listen, you've got to remember, it's Marvel. You can
That's right.
do
It's the
anything you
multiverse.
want.
This is a different timeline.
Oh man. But I'm excited about watching him. Just a heads up, if you're going to listen to us for the Creed, what we'll do is we'll of course talk about the first two, and then we'll have a period of time where we'll have just a moment where we generally talk about the third one without doing spoilers, and then we'll deep dive into it. So feel free to listen in. Even if you're looking forward to maybe seeing it and you haven't had time to yet, you can still get some good nuggets out of next week's episode.
All right. Before we wrap up, you want some Rocky trivia?
I do.
All right, let's do it. Number one, where does Rocky first meet Adrian?
He meets her at the pet store.
That is correct. When he first bought Cuff and Link. Quick bit of trivia. Did you know that Stallone still has those turtles?
Oh, really?
Cuff
I didn't
and
know
Link.
turtles live that long.
Turtles live forever. Like
Really?
they will likely outlive him. Yeah. It's crazy. In the first Rocky movie, what is Rocky's day job?
Rocky is a
What's the polite way of saying it?
I mean, he's a collector. He goes and he collects the money, and if they don't give the money, then he threatens to break their thumb, even though he doesn't.
Yeah, then he doesn't break their thumb. If you don't break their thumb, then I got a reputation, Rocky. Yeah, he's an enforcer for a loan shark. He's a bum. All right, so John G. Avildsen directed another film about a famous underdog in 1984. What was that movie?
Another underdog?
Uh-huh. Very famous underdog story.
1984?
Uh-huh. Went on to be a trilogy, and he actually directed all three of them.
Am I gonna kick myself?
Oh, yeah.
All right.
You might even crane kick yourself.
Did you just give me a hint?
I sure did.
Did you just give me a Karate Kid hint?
I did.
Of course, I was gonna say Karate Kid.
Of course you were. He did. He directed the Karate Kid in 1984, and I'm pretty sure he did 2 and 3. I know he did 3 for sure. I'm pretty sure he did all 3. Okay, number 4, Robert Jr. was played by Milo Ventimiglia, as we mentioned, in Rocky Balboa. But who played the younger version of Robert in the previous film, Rocky 5?
I don't know the actor's name, but I saw him yesterday. But I don't know if I've seen him in anything else that I can recall. Unless he grew up to be somebody who I would have seen him in something else. Who is it?
If you had just given me that it was Sylvester Stallone's son, I would have said that's fine.
That's his actual son?
Yep, Sage Stallone. He played his son in the movie. Yeah.
No, really?
Yep. Really.
Wow. I guess Sage was like, yeah, I'm out.
He actually passed away.
Oh.
I can't remember if he passed away before Rocky Balboa or if it was after that, but I can't remember how he passed away, but it was sad.
Oh, that's a shame. That's sad.
All right, this one we've already talked about. So if you get this wrong, I'm just gonna come through the screen and box your ears. What real life professional wrestler played the fictional Thunderlips baby who fought Rocky for a charity event in Rocky 3?
Hulk Hogan.
I love the line where he's walking in and he said, "Why is he up on a box?" No, he's walking because he's so tall. And then Rocky asked Mick, "What do you think a guy like that eats?" And Mickey says, "About 202 pounds."
And then they announce it at 202 pounds.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah.
Such a great franchise. Folks, if you're out there listening and you've enjoyed this conversation, join in on the conversation. Let us know what your comments are. Let us know what your thoughts are on the Rocky franchise. Are You Like Us is 4 your favorite? I mean, if it's not, you're wrong. But
Thank you. That's true. Maybe you need to listen to the speech in Rocky Balboa and get your head right.
That's right. Keep moving forward. Doesn't matter how hard you can hit. It's about how hard you can get hit.
Yeah.
And if you don't agree that 4 is correct, we will come and hit you.
That's right.
Hard and just see how far you can keep going. Just kidding. We're not going to do that. We're not violent people much. So yes, please let us know what you think. Leave a comment, leave a 5-star review, leave a thumbs up,
subscribe,
hit the notification thingamajig, and
share.
Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your worst enemy.
There you go.
And we're coming back again next week, like we said, with the Creed trilogy. So we're going to be continuing this boxing epic conversation, moving into one more week. Landon, any closing thoughts?
Nope. Just super thankful for the opportunity to talk about it. I enjoyed that yesterday. My wife and daughter were out of town at a competition for dance, and then my son was with my parents, so I literally just watched the movies and then tinkered around with like taking apart a switch and putting it back together. And so that was like my day, and that was perfect for that yesterday. So yeah,
little vacation day for dad.
It was. Yeah.
All right, guys, have a great whatever it is wherever you are.
Bye-bye.